I think that's good. All right. So that's what I was hoping for. So thank you again.
No problem. I'm not very talented with a computer, so you have to explain everything.
Well, it seems like we're working it out. So that's the marvelous thing about this experience, that we're all. That's kind of like we're doing a traveling trip. I'm sure you had to improvise along the
Oh
way.
yes, definitely, several times.
Wonderful. We're almost, I think we're almost to our starting point at 1. So I'm going to wait until then, because I definitely want to make sure as many students get a chance to participate. If any of our students are having difficulty, I'm going to try my best to facilitate that, and that way everybody can be a part of it. Are you seeing the map still, or are you seeing my James Taylor music selection?
I see your James Taylor music selection.
Okay, so let me see if I can fix that screen setting. Aha, there we go. Hey, this is so interesting how all of this works. I love it. I really, I'm fascinated by this whole process. When when we had the COVID, experience start in the spring last year, we were thrust into this whole idea of virtual learning. And in some ways, it gave us permission to reach out of our comfort zone and reach out to people outside of our own community. And this idea of actually interacting with former students and people around the world is, honestly, it's amazing. I'm sure you've probably had experiences that you would have never had otherwise.
Well, that's exactly how I feel. On the one hand, it's so nerve-wracking, the whole lockdown and COVID and problems it brings along. And then on the other hand, you have so many opportunities and new things you learn, new people you meet. So it's like probably everything in life. It's not only the bad, it's always a good side to it. And that's definitely the very positive good side to it.
Very good. I just saw a couple more students arriving. That's awesome. I'm super excited about that. I can, I'm gonna have so much fun playing with all of the technology in front of me. I'm gonna be like a producer on a TV show. I'm going to maybe pull up a little bit of an introduction of, and so if I misstep, I will. I know this is I'm not intending to show this right quite yet, but I'm gonna. Okay, this is. Got our links here somewhere. I'm gonna pull up the link for our conversation that we were having earlier. I have a bunch of different pages up here. Aha, there's the other one. All right. So I'm going to introduce our special guest, Julia. If I mispronounce your last name, I apologize. Husfeldt.
Oh, you did that very good. It's correct. Husfeldt.
Thank you. And Julia is a former Lebanon high school student. As a foreign exchange student many years ago, I am so thankful that we're having this chance to talk with Julia and have a chance to experience vicariously through her world travels. I'm going to let her kind of explain some of those. But she now lives in Germany, in Bonn, the former capital. And also, she is a police officer. That's very fascinating. And also is married to a police officer. Wonderful family experience. I love to hear about those things. And two of the trips that we're going to talk about today, in addition to just wonderful life lessons, is going from Alaska to Chile and also from Germany to Kazakhstan. We're going to encourage students to participate along the way. And anytime you would like to ask a question or reflect about some of the conversation, I encourage you to. This is by all means a learning experience, and don't feel shy. I think we all have kind of camera shyness. I know just being able to reflect on a virtual world versus an in-person world, we make this work the best we can. So I'm going to let Julia introduce a little bit more of herself, and then maybe we can get into some of the travels.
Well, hi everybody. I'm Julia. Good evening, because over here it's now 8 o'clock at night, so 8 p.m. I'm 51 years old, and I used to be a student from Lebanon High School in 1987. I'm very proud. I still have my yearbook here. Back then, my name was Julia Becker. Becker, like the tennis profi, the Boris Becker. It's the same last name. Unfortunately, I'm not related, so I'm not that rich. And of course, back then it started in the United States, actually, maybe a couple of years before, when I was an exchange student in Peru, that I discovered that I really much liked traveling and getting to know other cultures and living in other cultures. And therefore, I'm very happy that I since could do some travels and experience other people and their countries, which is really a present if you can do that. But I guess a big part of being able to do that is actually that I was a student in Lebanon High School, because back then, when you're 16 years old, you're becoming an adult, and you find out about stuff you like, about traveling, about languages, and I think that back then it started that I loved so much to travel and get to know people.
Very good, thank you. And I was muting myself just for a second because I had an announcement on the loudspeaker. So I appreciate your understanding there. One of the things that we want to do is give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. If I could go around the room and ask maybe each of you students to just briefly introduce yourself. I'm going to maybe ask, we'll unmute you. I'll ask each of you guys to unmute, and for just a second, just introduce yourself. I know we don't have many students in here, so it's always easier to do that personally. Ah, look, I've got my artwork behind me. I recently took a trip to the Smoky Mountains and made some creative editing choices whenever I got back. So, all right, well, our shy students, I'm not hearing you. Shai, can you say hi?
Hi.
Good, I'm so glad. And Caleb, I think we heard from you just briefly earlier. Very good. Anna, I've seen you kind of lurking in the background, but I've not heard your voice. Hello, Anna.
Hi.
Good to hear your voice. Kylie, if you would say hello.
Hello.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for joining us. And I am going to be recording this also so that I can share some of our experiences with my students who couldn't make it. In addition, we are making a culture fair video highlight reel, and so we're going to take some snippets from each of our conversations and share those with the community in our school. Cheyenne is actually one of the students who was helping me edit video, so I'm thankful that she's able to join us here. First of all, as we look at, Julia, you had the chance to live in the United States and experience our school, and it would be wonderful to kind of give that reflection back to students so they can understand maybe what it's like to maybe live in the United States from a different background? What are some of the things that are similar and different from school that you grew up with? I know it's been a few years, but maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'd love to share that experience. It was very exciting. If you're 16 years old and then from now to then you leave the continent and live in another country, it's really exciting. There's so many things that are different. You couldn't even explain because it's really so much. It's the food, it's the family you live in, it's the houses, it's the school system, it's the language. And for me, it was really exciting to experience the point where, you know, when you come as a foreigner to United States, you think and you dream in your own language. And then there's some point in between, maybe after, I think it was after 3 to 4 months, you start to dream and think in English language. And that was really a point where I thought, okay, now I feel kind of home. Before that, you become a little homesick from time to time, and you kind of experience a cultural shock, I would say it is, because really everything is different. The food is different, the language, the thinking, the school system, people talking to you. For me, at the beginning, was really hard. My American host family, my dad spoke really strong slang, and we learn English in school. That's school English. There's a big difference to American English, and even more a big difference to people who talk kind of slang.
Very good. I'm wonderful. I was an exchange student in Costa Rica, and I can relate to you about, you know, that transition period of kind of feeling out of place, and then all of a sudden you really became part of the culture. You started appreciating the food and the music and the traditions. What are some of the traditions or things that you recall from your time in the States?
My American host family, very nice people. The Jordan family, they are very religious, and they went to church 3 times a week. And my family in Germany was not religious at all. For me, that was really a big difference, going to church 3 times a week and having to wear skirts in church. When I came to the United States, I didn't have one skirt. So I remember my American grandma lending me one because I wouldn't have been able to go to church. Yeah.
That's
So
fascinating. Yeah. I mean, and of course, within the United States, there are several different cultures, and even in Lebanon, we have different, you know, expectations depending on the type of church. If it was a more conservative versus more laid back. I know probably even 20 years ago, things have changed dramatically. Just because we think about what expectations are. I mean, now kids really can dress however they wish in school, whereas maybe when you went to high school here, there probably was somewhat of a dress code and expectations.
well, sometimes there was a dress code, but I remember it was only on game days. So I was on the basketball team and I was on the volleyball team, and every time we had a game, we were the coaches told us to dress up very much. And I think that's a very good thing. They don't do that over here in Germany, but it gives you a special feeling. People are looking at you differently if you dress up, and that on that day, I think it was a smart idea to do that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's almost like you're going to work, or it's your business attire.
Right.
And you are a police officer, and I'm sure that there's something to be said about the uniform and how people treat you.
Well, yeah, I guess it's pretty much the same like in the United States. The big difference is we have to work until we're 62 years old. I know that my American colleagues, they only have to work 20 or 25 years, and after that they can retire. That's not the way it is in Germany. You have to work until you're 62. It is a big difference is all the stuff, the gear the police officers over in the United States have that we don't have them over here in Germany. For example, a big thing in my county where I work is now that we are trying out the weapon called taser. Do you know what
Yes,
taser?
I do.
And we do not have that in Germany, and we didn't have that yet. And now they are trying to kind of get used to that. The taser is very good for us to keep people on distance. If, for example, somebody tries to attack you with a knife, you don't have to shoot him. You just take the taser, and then it's easier to handle that person.
I was a journalist for several years when I first moved to Lebanon, and the county government was introducing the taser, and I was interviewing the police officers and one of the judges, Larry Winfrey. And I asked him, well, what does that feel like? And he said, well, there's only one way to find out. And he kind of said, so I had a first person experience of having all my muscles kind of lock up. And
oh, really?
Two big police officers, caught me, and I was fairly young. I mean, he was like 25, 26 years old. So I wasn't afraid of being hurt necessarily, but it was a great experience for me to share. I think that was one of my things about being a journalist, that I always tried to, explain and describe and show, the people that read the newspaper, what it was like for whatever reason. And I'm sure when you travel, you put yourself in the shoes of those people that you see. I know, there is a distinction between a tourist and being someone who's immersed in a culture. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry.
I remember. No problem. I remember so many times you meet people and you're so grateful because the people you meet, they are maybe very poor, but still they're interested in you and they invite you. And sometimes I really was a little bit embarrassed. There's one experience I made in Peru. It was raining really hard. We were on the road since months. We were not looking very good. We were soaking wet. And we didn't want to ride anymore, so we stood there at a place somewhere out in the nowhere. There was a little. It was not a house; it was like a cabin, and there was a little part in front where there was some kind of shelter. And we were just putting the motorbikes at the on the street, and then we sat beneath that shelter. Suddenly, the door opens, and the people said, "May we invite you inside?" There is something you probably would not experience in Germany. If you go in front of some house in the rain, sit in front of their house, and then would somebody looks at you, even though you're all dirty and wet, and they would invite you inside. I was really embarrassed because they was very kind of those people, because they saw we were cold, it was wet, and they wanted to help, and they were really poor. Same thing happened in Kazakhstan. We were trying to find a cheap hotel to stay at that night, and some woman on a bicycle, she said, "Can I help you?" And we explained our situation. She said, "Well, in this village there is no hotel, but I can invite you to our house." And of course, they gave us food, they gave us a place to stay. They had a little party for us at that night. And it is so heartwarming that people, no matter where you are from, they don't know you, but they invite you and they help you, no matter what happens. And we experience this very often, that no matter how terrible the situation was you were in, and you thought, okay, I'm to this point, and now there's no way out anymore. Somebody comes around and they help you. That is really nice to experience, especially if you're a police officer, and usually during your job, the people you have to deal with, they are not all so kind and positive. And it's very good to experience the other side of those people as well. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, yes. I was saying, I think that's reassuring in the fact that we often are maybe afraid or have some apprehension about going outside of our comfort zone, or not feeling like we'll be safe or welcomed. And your conversation is really, I think, heartwarming, because I've had the same experiences of traveling, all over the world, and people often go out of their way to make you feel welcome. I know that there are bad things that happen, but generally speaking, most people are really good, and they want to make you welcome in their town, make you feel like, they're interested. And it's just a great thing. And I think there probably could be a book that you could write about that, because you had so many wonderful stories, I'm sure. Anything that stands out?
Well, those everything which had to deal with the people you meet, that was really extraordinary. That there's so many nice and wonderful people in the world. Out of nowhere, they will help you. That is really very wonderful. I remember one, for example, it's maybe only a small story, but all the little mosaic stones together make the big picture of how wonderful this world is. I was sitting somewhere, I think it was Montana, maybe, in a fast food restaurant. It was McDonald's. I loved to go to McDonald's because they have a very good Wi-Fi system, and that was my possibility to get in touch with my family. So I was sitting in there, my motorbike packed, fully packed, and at that part, the first part I did by myself without my husband. So from Alaska to Las Vegas, I was all by myself.
Wow.
And my motorbike was outside. It was the luggage on there. It was packed. It had the German license plates on, all the stickers on. And I was sitting in McDonald's trying to get the Wi-Fi. And then some guy came up to me and he said, "Is that your bike out there?" And I said, "Yeah, that's my bike." And my bike. And then they always wanted to know where you're from. What did you do? Why are you traveling? And sometimes it was a little bit nerve-wracking is too much, but it was annoying because you wanted to get in touch with your family. But then again, I can understand the people, because for them it was the first contact. So I put away my mobile and I talked to this man. I said, "This is what I plan to do. I want to do this trip." And he didn't talk too much. He just nodded, and then he went outside again. I saw him looking at my motorbike. So I was on my mobile again. Then he came in, gave me $20, put him on the table. He said, "You're living my dream. I want you to have some dinner on me. Thank you for those stories." And he went away. And I was so how nice of that man.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That was really amazing. Yeah.
You think about, okay, we read magazines and read books and watch TV shows, but to have this personal interaction, you are, I think, an inspiration for so many. And so that's very generous of your time. And I think telling of being a traveler, it's not just about you receiving, but also you sharing. That's wonderful.
Yeah, really.
Have you thought about writing a book?
Many people, I gave you the link to my homepage, to our.
Yes,
many people, when they read those stories, every day it's like a diary. Every day we write a few lines, what happened, how many people we met, what we talked about. And many times people came to me and they said, "Those stories are so beautiful. Please write a book." But then again, I think, why should I write a book? Everybody can read on my homepage. So I don't want to do it in a book. So everybody interested can go on that homepage. And the nice thing is, unfortunately, it is in German, but I guess there's some translation possibility. But even if, for example, when you say Costa Rica, if you say, "Oh, I'm interested, what did she do in Costa Rica?" It's really easy to find that spot and then read lines about country Costa Rica.
Definitely. And so you've traveled through, obviously, you on your way south, you obviously went through Costa Rica.
Yeah, beautiful country. Do you speak Spanish yet?
I'm sorry?
Do you speak Spanish?
Hablo español un poquito, no mucho. I actually was in an exchange, and so I was taking courses at the university, Earth College is what they call it. Earth University is College of Agriculture in the middle of a rainforest, and they were teaching things like chemistry and earth science and economics. But it was a challenge. I mean, I took all those courses in Spanish, and I really appreciate that, and I can think back firsthand how it is to be out of your comfort zone and to be very appreciative of others and for their their graciousness, even if you are, someone new. Oftentimes, starting a conversation was the beginning of a friendship. And, maybe it was just, sharing a Coke or something very simple, but then you're asking them, how their family is or what they're doing, because everyone has a story.
That's true. Yeah. And those conversations, those are the most valuable things you can share, and the experience you have then. That is very much, I think, very much the same. The people you meet, they are the heartful, I don't know how to express, but they are the good things which make the good story.
Very much so. So, at 16, you probably had the bug to travel. That's something that's continued throughout your life. What was it that inspired you to make this worldwide, effort?
To be honest, I have no idea. I think my father was the same. As a young man, he worked for, I think, 7 years in Namibia,
Mm-hmm.
which is in south part of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's the same DNA. I don't know.
But you obviously, you were willing to take some risk. Obviously, the United States is it's a pretty safe place, but you eventually made that decision as a high schooler to get an exchange. And then, what was your post high school experience like? What were some things that you did to kind of develop your career, and then, of course, where you are today?
Well, starting as a police officer, you usually start in Germany. If you start a career in Germany, that's maybe one big difference about the cultures. In Germany, if you start a career, you stick with your job. You don't change jobs. That's the usual part. Maybe that changes in the next years, mm-hmm. Might be, but in the moment you can say if you start with a job, you stick with it. And so I started pretty early being a police officer, and being a police officer, it's we have 30 days of vacation in a year, mm-hmm. which is for Americans probably very much, mm-hmm. but then for Europeans that's not so much. So I did something which is called a sabbatical. Yeah. You can kind of collect free days to have a whole year off. So 4 years I worked for only 80% of my wages. Mm-hmm. And the 5th year I got for free then.
Wow, that's amazing.
That gave me the possibility to ride from Alaska to Chile, because that took me 7 months to go from Alaska to Chile.
Oh, that is a marvelous idea. I know universities often will offer sabbaticals, and the clergy oftentimes I hear have a sabbatical in those areas that require research and really enriching someone's life. And that's something that I haven't heard in the United States as a general rule. Is this a practice that's offered to, widespread, or is it just certain professions?
Well, more and more it's widespread, but it began with civil servants. Mm-hmm. And as a police officer, I'm a civil servant, so I could use that. But now it's kind of, I would almost say it's a trend, because many young people, they want to work. They are very busy working, but then they say, okay, this is my life. This is my only life. And I want to work hard. But then on the other side, I want to have time to fulfill my dreams, to travel, maybe to start a family, seeing your kids growing up. And so more and more, there's the possibility to take a certain part of spare time free. So that doesn't have to be a whole year. You can say, okay, I work 3 years now full time, and then I have half a year free. You can kind of organize your own life. I think that's a very good idea, because nobody wants to work from being 18 years old until they're 62. That's terrible to think about that. No free time. No spare time, just work. It's not so.
And in the way they organize it, so that you're willing to take a cut in pay, but with the expectation that it will, it'll give you freedom. And I think a person probably could manage themselves. If you know, if they didn't have a program, they could probably, you know, discuss it with their boss if it worked out and say, okay, I'm going to start saving some money. Would you, you know, give me some liberty, you know, either through unpaid leave or, you know, who knows? I think that's a great idea.
I think so too, and especially big companies, if they want to have good people working for them, they have to do something in addition to make it attractive. Why should I work for that company? I could work for another company, and I think that might be a nice possibility for the future. That you are able to work hard, but then as well have a time where you can say, okay, now I need some time for my hobbies, for my dreams.
Very much so. That's amazing. And you mentioned, you know, getting into the police force. Is there an academy that you took?
Yes,
Or
well,
training?
all the jobs you can take in Germany have the one in comparison to the United States, one big disadvantage. If you want to work in a job, you have to learn that job for a very long time. So all our learning parts or learning times are 3 years or sometimes more. So I learned 3 years to be a police officer before I was able to go out on the street. So they took me 3 years in a school to learn how to do that. I know over in the United States it's only 8 to 16 weeks, I think.
Yes, I think they're trying to streamline it, which, you know, has its disadvantages. I'm sure that there are certain trainings that you had maybe before you were in a heated situation. I'm sure Lebanon probably isn't quite as risky as the bigger cities, and we have police academies, and so you know, students right out of high school or with some college can take the police academy for maybe 6. You know, like you said, you know, maybe 6 months, maybe not quite that long, but it's you know, a few months, and then they would be offered a position, potentially an entry level job, where they would, you know, just be a patrol officer, and maybe have a partner, and then over the time, I've actually had students of mine go into the police force, and now are detectives and taking leadership roles, and it's really rewarding. To see students take on, you know, silver service or just jobs that have a meaningful, you know, impact on your community. How do you see your job as a role? You know, is it more of a job or a career, or how do you portray what you do?
Well, I would say it's a career because I really, even after so many years, I still would say that was the exact right thing for me to pick. It really works for me very good. I like that job. I like going to work not knowing what happens. You know, it's always exciting. You know, sometimes there's nothing. Okay, it's kind of quiet, and then there's some buddy talking over the radio. How do you say it? Over the
yes, the scanner.
And you can hear from the voice. Okay, now you have to do X. And that's what I really liked so much. And especially with with me liking traveling so much, it gives you some possibilities or opportunities as well, because the police family all over the world, it's actually really like a family.
Mm-hmm.
So many people I met on the street were police officers, and of course they helped me. On that trip from Alaska to Chile, in Alaska, I met a guy from Portland, and we talked to each other, and we very soon found out that he was a police officer as well. And the friendship is still now, we're still friends. And you know, that trip from Alaska to Chile was in 2013, so 7-8 years ago. We're still friends, and over the time, he bought a motorbike and put it in our house here in Germany. And every time he wants to travel Europe, he just flies over. We maintain his bike, and he takes off and can discover Europe over here, which is very nice for him. And then he said, well, you got to come over here to the United States, because riding a motorbike in the United States on the Backcountry Discovery Route, do you know that, those BDRs?
You mentioned that as being definitely more off the beaten path, allowing you to see the countryside and maybe the more scenic parts.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. We did the BDR, the Backcountry Discovery Route, in Washington, in Idaho, and Oregon. And that was really wonderful nature. And so he said to us, Travis, our friend from Portland, said to us, okay, I got my bike at your place. Why don't you buy some bikes and we put them at my place in Portland. So when you come over here, you can travel on your own bikes. And that's what we did. So we have now 2 bikes in the United States. He has 1 bike at our house, and that's really a wonderful thing to do.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I know this isn't the exact path. Can you see the map that I pulled up?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can't make that happen here. Okay, there you go. So you can see, maybe Julia, do you see it now?
Yes, I see the map you drew.
Yeah,
From
this is actually just I went on to Wikipedia, which is obviously not the most accurate sometimes, but it does give you an idea of the distance, at least, of how far a trip from Alaska all the way to the southern tip of Chile. I'm overwhelmed by the the idea. And you mentioned covering.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
on the map you showed, you have this little yellow square in there between Panama and Colombia.
Yes.
That's the Darien Gap. And the problem over there is there's no roads. You cannot ride. So we had to find a way to come from Panama to South America, to Colombia. And we decided to do that on a ship. It's called the Steel Red. It's actually a ship from the Netherlands. And we were able to put our motorbikes on that ship. And then we drove 6 days through the Caribbean Sea to come from Panama to Colombia. And that was a wonderful trip as well, because after so many kilometers or miles on your motorbike, then being on a cruise ship, kind of like Caribbean Sea, that was really nice.
That was kind of the splurging of the trip, I'm sure. I rented a car whenever I was in Costa Rica with my fiance at the time, my wife now, and we didn't splurge enough to get an SUV, so we got a mini compact, and I was driving over some of the worst roads. Hit into a bunch of potholes. I call it the pothole the size of a VW Bug, and ended up getting 4 flat tires.
Incredible, yeah.
But the folks there, it was like a miracle. Somebody came over the hill, some Canadians on vacation, and we ended up staying at at a really nice bed and breakfast. Sometimes those little splurging moments are really special, and so it kind of gave you a chance to relax, I'm sure, and see some good things.
But that's exactly what I tried to say before. You're at the point where you say it couldn't get worse. 4 flat tires. What do you want to do? But then people come around, they help you, and afterwards, years afterwards, those are the stories you like to tell, because in that situation you were so grateful, thankful that people came and helped you.
Very much so. It was and I think there probably would have been someone else, but it just happens to be these friendly Canadians that were going to a bed and breakfast. If it would have been someone, that were a local, I'm sure they would have been just as gracious.
Yeah.
Well, let's, if you don't mind, I know we talked a little bit about the other trip. I'm going to pull up your trip from Germany to Kazakhstan. I'm hopeful that you can see it. Do you see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it's a amazing idea, and I just, my mind is hard to grasp the magnitude of a whirlwind trip. And you mentioned 7 months for the Alaska to Chile trip. How long did this trip take?
This trip took us 3 months.
Wow, you must have been traveling.
Only 3 months, but we traveled almost every day, except of, I think it was 4 days in Astana, the capital city of Kazakhstan, because actually the dream or the idea of this trip was born in Costa Rica. Costa Rica, we met a guy from Kazakhstan on a motorbike, And he said, come to Kazakhstan in 2017. There's the World Exhibition. And we said, oh, that's a plan. We're going to do that. So in 2013 and 2013, we decided, okay, in 2017 and 2017, we'll do this trip to the World Exhibition in Kazakhstan. And that's where the idea was born.
Awesome. Awesome. So you took this trip starting in Germany, and then you went north through a lot of Eastern Europe. And I would love to hear maybe because you're from Germany, and so you have lived your whole life understanding the history and living the history, for that matter, of how Germany was a split country for most of our life, and back in the 90s. Things changed. Could you kind of describe that and maybe give my students a little bit of an idea of what that impact was?
Well, that's really hard to describe, because when growing up in the western part of Germany, for me, it was absolutely normal that there was an eastern part of Germany where I was not allowed to go to. If I wanted to go to, I had to drive over a border. They were really strict. You were not allowed to stop at any place. You had to tell them where you would stay for the night. And that was really kind of scary, you could almost say. And then suddenly at the end of the 80s, 89, nobody really thought or could imagine that at that part that the borderlines would fall and Western and Eastern Germany would be one. It was from one day to the other. And I remember being so surprised, because nobody, that was suddenly it happened. And we were really happy. And I'm still very proud that they managed. I was a young person at that time, that those people managed to combine those two countries again without fights or a war. There was a very friendly, peaceful coming together again. So there was no war which made those borderlines or frontiers fall.
Isn't that something? Yeah. I've been able to travel to the Western Germany and Eastern Germany, and even to this day, there are a lot of cultural differences, and because of the years and years of economic depression. And maybe the lack of freedom to do certain things. And I don't know, I think people are super excited to have that freedom. And there has been an acceleration of development. I mean, do you have family or friends from Eastern Germany?
Well, meanwhile, yes, we have some family living in Berlin. In the eastern part of Berlin, and nowadays it's really common and normal to have friends in the eastern part of Germany, and you wouldn't feel that this country was divided. If you don't know where to look at, it looks really very combined, very natural as one.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't any trouble traveling at all when I was there, a few years ago, and yet, whenever I was traveling, in high school, before it was taboo. I mean, it was kind of a fearful, thing to think about because of the Cold War was still in existence, But I don't know if my students can truly appreciate that tension that was there. And then, of course, Gorbachev, bringing down the wall. He came to Missouri and spoke when I was in college, and we went to the university and at Fulton, and it was at the end of the Cold War. I mean, everybody was so excited. Of course, I was taking pictures. I was a photojournalist at the time, and so I actually climbed a tree so I'd have a better view. And it just, those type of moments change the world. And for you as someone from Germany that can probably appreciate it more than most, and then you took advantage of that freedom by traveling through the eastern half of Europe all the way to Kazakhstan. I would love to maybe get your impression about, that road of change, because you went to each of the villages that were occupied by the Soviets for generations.
Yeah, well, for it's the trip to Kazakhstan was for us maybe very or a different experience, because actually being from Germany, you do not need any visa.
Oh wow.
You know, for the United States, okay, you need some visa, but that is for Europe or the European countries, you do not need visa. If you go, you take your passport and you can travel wherever you want. The big exception is Russia. If you want to go to Russia for being a German, you need a visa. So we applied for a visa, and we had to apply for a special visa because we wanted to bring in our motorbikes. That's something different, like being flying into the country, flying out again. If you want to bring your motorbike or your vehicle, you have to have a special visa. So we were really happy to get that visa. And being at the border, it's really strange when they stop you, and then you feel that, I don't know how to explain it. If you go from Germany to Spain, you're not even being stopped at the border. But now going to Russia, they stop you, they check your luggage, and that's all experience which Germans are not used to, because we are used to just, travel from one country to another without doing anything. And that was kind of strange to feel that. But once you're in the country of Russia, it's like all the other countries. People are very friendly. They're very interested. They ask you where you're from. What kind of license plate is that? Where do you want to go? And actually, people all over the world are very much the same, and that is nice to experience. If you see the trip you built on the map,
yes,
we did go through Poland. That's the first country,
yes.
From Germany go to Poland. But then we didn't go to Belarus, which is White Russia.
Okay.
We went north to Lithuania and Latvia, and that was very interesting countries as well. If you ever have the possibility to go to, for example, Estonia, that is a wonderful country to travel. And then we went east straight onto Russia, onto Moscow. And going to Moscow with your motorbike, we were really amazed that we made it to Moscow on our own motorbike. And that's, if you look at the whole trip, it's really a short trip to do. But being, on the red place of Moscow with your motorbike, that is really, that was amazing.
Yeah. What year, again, what year was this that you traveled this?
That was in 2017.
Okay, so very recent, to be honest. And, in a lot of ways, we think about modern history and, political and geographic challenges. What was, with the weather? Was it very cold, or how did you deal with that?
Well, very different. It was, at the beginning, it was cold and wet in Russia, but then going over the Ural, which is a big mountain thing to go over, after that it became a little better. And then going into Kazakhstan is 8 times as big as Germany. So you have, if you think from the media, from weather, you have hot parts of Kazakhstan. You have parts where there's always snow. You have all the different climate parts. So you couldn't say it's like that. It was always different.
Yeah, I'm looking here, and I was fortunate to travel into Tibet, and so it's kind of up on this plateau as well, probably mountainous and very, very much different than Germany and most of Europe. So
yes,
fascinating.
Kind of like
getting into the eastern or Middle Eastern areas. How would you describe kind of the changes of culture or food and just the way of life between the West and the East?
The big difference is maybe that people in the East, since the countries are so big and the villages and people are not living so close to each other, if you stop somewhere in Kazakhstan at the road, you just stop. People stop immediately and ask if they can help, because they are they need to help each other because the distances are so big. So nobody would just leave you at the street without helping you. Then when we came back, the same trip from Kazakhstan, I told you we went through Georgia and then Turkey, Greece to Italy. My husband crashed with his motorbike in Italy, and we were really in a dangerous situation. People were riding by us; they didn't stop. And I guess the same in Germany, because those cultures are not used to anymore to help each other, because there's AAA, there's all over the place. You can use your mobile, and somewhere in Kazakhstan in the desert you do not have contact with your mobile. There's no people, so if somebody sees you stopping at the street, they immediately stop and ask if they can help you.
Very good. I think that's a really telling part, and in some ways, we in the Ozarks in the Lebanon area still have a small town feel. I hope that we would go out of our way to help our neighbors. I'm always talking to my students and my kids about helping others, as kind of your obligation. And as a police officer yourself, you've lived that life of helping, and that's fascinating to kind of hear. I guess I'm trying to wrap my mind around some of the cultural differences that I've experienced, and I think you're very observant in the idea that we are changing as a society between being more neighborly and being more isolated. Maybe that could be a topic of discussion on how do we stem the tide of isolation. Something that I hope doesn't occur more, but I think maybe our digital world can play a positive and a negative role in that.
Yeah, for me, actually, it's very much positive, because the being able, for example, Facebook or maybe internet anyway, being able to stay in contact with people. I know from, for example, Lebanon High School in 86, 87, that is really, that is very good, because you wouldn't be able to keep relationships over so many years by writing letters, which took 3 weeks to come from one end of the world to the other. So I'm very thankful for the internet and Facebook. I have some friends from Lebanon High School. I remember Raquel, who played basketball with me, or Leslie Beavers, who I met years later somewhere in Germany. And that is really my family, my host mom and sister. I still keep in touch over the internet. That is very, very good and very nice to experience.
That's really cool. Good points. I had family that were going to the Lebanon High School about that time. The Huff family, Miss Melissa or Missy and Tracy and Katie were all, I think, in the high school at that time. So I don't know. It's been so many years. I'm sure it's hard to recall, but I'll have to ask them about remembering Julia from Germany.
Actually, back then we were 5 exchange students. There was another guy from Germany, Erhard Wagner. There was a girl from Netherlands. There was a girl from Finland and a girl from New Zealand. So there was many exchange students in that year.
That's awesome. My sister, she loves to travel, and while she was traveling in India up to Nepal, she met a man from Sweden, and they just became instant friends and traveled for the rest of their trip, and actually are married. And my sister lives in Sweden now. And so when you talked about going up through Estonia, that was just not too far from Sweden, of course, and I'm sure travels. You've probably been that way.
Actually, we did one big motorbike trip one time around the Baltic Sea, so we went through Sweden as well.
Yeah, she lives in the southern part of Sweden, Helsingborg, not too far from Copenhagen.
Oh yeah.
And so I traveled and visited her 6 years ago with my stepbrother, and we traveled quite a bit and went to Germany and Hungary, and it was a marvelous time just to, because we don't think about how travel is so much easier in Europe. It is just a hop, skip, and a jump, between countries. It's almost like states in some ways.
Yeah.
We in the United States we travel, to California or Grand Canyon in Arizona, and we don't think too much of it. And in a lot of ways, Europeans will do the same to different countries.
That's true.
I know that we definitely want to just allow you to share any other things. If you have any other, I think you had a video I was going to play to kind of reinforce some of that experience. I don't know if you can see it here. I'm going to pull it up. I may play this for students. Can you see this, Julia?
Yes, I can see it.
All right.
That
You can go ahead and give us an idea of what this is.
Well, the video that the guy you cannot see him on the left. He is a former police officer from Los Angeles, and since I said police is like a big family, and I talked to so many colleagues, and they invited me to come over. They showed me their home and what they worked at, and he now is retired, and he does kind of a TV channel. So for his TV, he made an interview, and he asked me about the trip. And in the back, you see all the bisons. They're on the Alaska highway somewhere in Canada. And there was very impressive, so big animals. And I had to go like slalom around those animals.
That could be pretty scary because those animals can sometimes do things unpredictable. I've been traveling, and the buffalo, they kind of rule the road.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, I want to play this, and then maybe we can have a discussion. I want to encourage students to provide feedback.
Then you crossed the border from Canada into the United States.
Well, actually, first I went to Vancouver Island. In Vancouver, we met. He couldn't stand being alone. He said, I'm going to go for a short trip to Vancouver. So he flew to Vancouver. We met in Vancouver for 3 or 4 days, I think.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very romantic guy.
It is, yes. And
Vancouver is a really nice town. And so I always thought to visit once Vancouver. And that was a good idea. She was in Vancouver, I had time. So we met in Vancouver and had really nice days.
And then you went back to Germany.
Yes, I had to, because I have to work.
By the way, I did mention, but they are police officers in Germany. I forgot if I told you that or not. And we'll talk about that a little later on too. Okay, so you're in Vancouver, you both meet, and then what happens after that?
after that, we had to depart again. So I went to Vancouver Island, and I had a look at Vancouver Island, and I took the ferry from Victoria, which is in the south part of Vancouver Island, to Port Angeles, I think it's called.
Port
That's
Angeles.
already United States.
Right.
So I took that ferry, and from then on, I did as they always refer to in Alaska, the lower states. I did,
It's the lower states.
yeah. I did Washington. I did zigzag there too, because I wanted to see all those national parks.
You went to like Yellowstone National Park?
Yeah. Well, how's it called? Glacier National
Yeah,
Park
Glacier
as well.
National
Glacier,
Park, yes.
right? And Yellowstone, and I did have a closer look to Mount St. Helen, which is really impressive for me as well.
That big volcano.
Yes, and I hiked around there, and I did a helicopter trip as well to see the volcano from the top. And then I went down. I saw the redwoods,
Mhm.
which
Those are giant
giant.
trees.
You know, I thought, should I do the big trees? Well, big deal. One tree is little, the other one is big, so there's nothing really special about it. But when you stand beneath those trees,
myself here for a second. So as you look back on this, and any of the students here have any questions or anything that you'd like to mention about that idea of a trans-American trip? I'll ask my students to speak up if they've ever thought about taking a trip that large.
I couldn't really hear all the video.
Oh, darn it. Well, I'll be sure to share this because the video was really nice to hear. It was kind of a congeniality of the two, the interviewer and Julia, talking about traveling, from the upper Americas down to the lower Americas, and I think hearing how the logistics of actually getting your motorcycle to the States alone takes a lot of ingenuity. I know whenever I was an exchange student, I packed my bicycle in a big box. And now, of course, after 9/11, that's becoming more and more of a challenge. Have you seen maybe traveling change since 9/11, Julia?
Well, I used being an exchange student in Lebanon, Missouri in 86, 87 gave me a lifelong visa for the United States. And after 9/11, that was not worth anything anymore. So I had to apply for new visa, and that's kind of complicated for us because you have to go to Frankfurt, which is far more south. It takes a day. So I was a little disappointed because I thought my lifetime I could travel to United States, but now I have to get a visa like every other tourist as well. Yeah, that's the biggest difference. Another difference is, of course, those terrible pictures. I remember everybody probably remembers where he was at that time and at 9/11. It was unbelievable what happened there. It was shocking. Still when I see those pictures, I cannot believe it.
Yeah, I mean, the world definitely changed. I feel like travel, we take it for granted that you could have, probably, stepped on an airplane and got to America without very much trouble at all. And now you're limited on the type of packages, the number of packages, or at least it seems to me that it really is. I don't know. I'm beginning to drive more and more as I have the opportunity because I can take my bicycle, I can camp, I can do so much more whenever I drive. Whereas flying, is convenient, but it's definitely not the way to see the world.
Yes.
Well, I'm wanting to offer any more questions, because this is, we're approaching our hour of conversation, and I want to respect that. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. Well, I know my students have been very gracious in taking the time to watch and participate in 2 Zoom meetings today. I want to thank you guys so much for that effort and time, and I look forward to talking with you some this week about that. Julia, I want to thank you especially for taking the time to share your experiences, and I really hope that we get a chance to share some more. If you're ever in the States, please don't hesitate to reach out. I love to travel, and if you ever enjoy experiencing the Niangua River or any of the Ozarks rivers, that's one of my passions, is to be on the water, and so I'd love to share that experience with you.
Sounds wonderful. Maybe that really will happen this year, because we want to ride our motorbikes from Portland to Texas to San Antonio.
Wow.
And I would like to visit my host family, the Jordan family in Lebanon. So I might just drop by and ask if you're in the high school, and then I say hello.
Very good. It's so good to talk with you, and wish you the very best. I want all of our students to give a big thank you and farewell.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening to me, and enjoy high school.
Thank you for telling us your story.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks again for everyone being a part of this conversation. Have a great night. See you later.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.